Hi everyone, welcome again. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about DBT. As promised, this is going to be a series talking about DBT, and then we're going to have sections where I'm going to train you on how to be a DBT expert. So, what is DBT? DBT is a data transformation tool that helps data engineers, analytics engineers, data analysts to effectively transform data in their data warehouse. Basically, DBT, you can say it is the T in ELT. Now, if you recall last week, we spoke about ETL, ELT, the differences, and how a lot of organizations are tilting more towards ELT because of how performant and scalable cloud warehouses are. Unlike ETL, like we mentioned, ELT transformation is the last phase. And in ELT, after the data has been extracted and loaded into your data warehouse, now your data warehouse can be integrated with DBT. DBT fits perfectly with modern BI stack and can be coupled with products like BigQuery, Snowflake, Postgres, Amazon Redshift, BI tools like Looker, Mode. Now you can see that DBT sits on your data platform. It does not store data, rather it is a transformation tool that helps these data warehouses to be able to process and transform data. The internal processing of DBT, how does DBT work exactly? What processes go on? So DBT, we already know, sits on your data platform, and DBT simply works by collecting a code that you've written, which is called a model, processing that model, and then transforming your data and persisting it back into your data warehouse. And now you might want to know, what is a model? A model is simply a .sql file. What DBT does is that you do not have to worry so much about your DDL or your DML, that is your data definition language or your data manipulation language. All you have to do is create an SQL file, transforming your data or putting your data in the best format that you would want that data to be. And when you run your DBT run or when you do your DBT build, DBT basically collects that code that you've written, then it compiles it, integrating your DDL or DML as the case may be, and then it persists it back into the data warehouse. Now, when your data is persisted back into your data warehouse, it is materialized as a table or as a view. This all depends on the materialization format that you have chosen in your project. Now, when I say DBT helps you collect code, compile it against your data warehouse, DBT is way more than that. DBT was built on the core foundation of software engineering principles, such that data engineers, data analysts, analytics engineers can be able to work collaboratively like software engineers. Now we have the development phase. DBT basically helps you to be able to build your data model. Now in the building phase, you're able to reference your source data, and then after referencing your source data, you're able to transform your data in the format you would want it to be. And then also it helps you to be able to integrate quality assurance. Now you know how we know that bad data equals to bad analysis, and decision making is built on insights gotten from your data. So it's really important that your data is not just giving insights, it's actually giving accurate insights. So you're able to apply testing and then documentation, of course. Have you ever been to a data team where they have little or no documentation and you found it really difficult to understand their data architecture? Now with DBT, you're able to document, and then it helps you to be able to basically build like a whole documentation for your data project. And then finally deployment. After you have built your project, you're able to deploy to production by basically because DBT also integrates CI/CD into your workflow. So by the time you're done, you're working on, say, a different branch, you're able to now merge your work or the work you've done into the main branch. Like I said, DBT is just really important because it helps people to be able to collaborate together in the analytics team. Now, core principles of DBT, we have version control, which I mentioned. So with DBT, you're able to track who did what, when did they do it, when the changes was made, and it's just really important to keep track of these changes. And then documentation, which I mentioned earlier, DBT comes with you can basically do DBT doc serve, and then this can be able to give like a clear documentation of your project. But before you do that, during your model building and your description in your YAML files, you're able to actually write great um, descriptions of your data sources, of your models, of metrics, of business calculations, things that you've done. So DBT compiles all of this information that you've put into your YAML files and develop them into a documentation. Also, it also helps you to be able to create like a DAG, that is your directed acyclic graph that shows all the lineage that your data processes or your data model has been through, say from your source to your staging models to your intermediate models to your data mart and the rest of them. Then we've covered the development stage. This, like I mentioned, your model is simply your SQL file. So it takes care of DBT takes care of your DDL and your DML. So once you run your project, DBT collects that code, compiles it, and runs it against your data warehouse. Now, something that is really important I spoke about when I said that DBT helps you to be able to work like software engineers. Now, think of a time where you had to write a really huge chunk of code, and maybe some other time you had to build like something, but you needed to work or use some part of the code that you've used for a different analysis. Now, DBT incorporates modular thinking. Now, modular thinking basically means being able to create simple, small chunks that can be pulled together to form a giant product. It refers to writing small pieces of code. So the way DBT is built, we have like the staging, intermediate, fact table dimensions. In your staging, this is basically like a one-to-one where your staging model is directly referencing a source. By source I mean like your data coming from your database, and then you can have like your intermediate, which not it's not compulsory that you have intermediate, but then most people would want to have like an intermediate table that references your staging. Now in your staging, most likely you don't really do transformation except light transformations like the way you would have preferred your data to come in from your data warehouse. So those are the little transformations that you most likely are going to do in your staging model. Then in your intermediate model, this is where you do like joins, you do basic, like you can also apply business logic in your intermediate model. And then your fact table basically is like an immutable transactions data. Think, for example, your organization sells clothes, right? And then for every order that is being ordered, for every order, or that is going to be your rules or your records rather. And then dimensions, think, for example, how organizations will have like a table that is specific to a customer, a table that is specific to employees. Now these tables are mutable, but they are slowly changing. DBT integrates quality assurance, which I mentioned earlier, into your modeling or your development phase to ensure that your data is in the best format. Now, we have two types of tests in DBT. We have the generic test and we have the singular test. The generic test is basically an inbuilt test that DBT already has, and then you can apply it at different stages in your modeling. You can apply it as the source level, where you want to test the source data that is coming in. You can also test the tables. You can also test the columns, that is at the column level. You can also test your models, of course. So example of these tests include like your not null and unique. Say you have a primary key field in your model and you would always want to test that that field is always unique and not null. You can use generic test for that. Now think you have a field that has referential integrity to another table and you want to always test that that data is not lost in transmission. So you can always set that test for relationships. Now we also have the one that tests for accepted values. Say you have a boolean value of true or false, and you want to make sure that the data you have is always true or false. You don't have true, false, and null, and you can use that. Then for singular test, this is used to test your business models. Think you want to test that your customers' age is not less than a certain, say it's not less than zero, or it's not negative, or you want to test that your revenue is not negative, or you want to test that the you don't have duplicates. So basically this is what you can use to test. So you can create like an SQL file that is going to live in your test directory, and then it's going to be referenced in the model that you would want to test. Now Finally, you can deploy your project after you have built, you have tested your project, and you're sure that you are ready for deployment. This is the stage where you finally deploy. Now, something that I need to let you know is that there are two ways you can use DBT. We have the DBT Cloud, which is a software as a service. It is a paid version of DBT, basically integrates everything, your CI/CD, your quality assurance, that is your testing, documentation. It is really easy to use. And now this is the DBT Cloud. Now we have the DBT IDE where you can use DBT from your command line. This one you can basically use like your VS Code to be able to access DBT. In the next series, we're going to be walking through um, building DBT models, testing models, and all of that. So I hope you stay tuned and thank you for your time.